Get a Dutch oven over medium-high heat, and then thinly slice 1 red onion. Then add a generous amount of olive oil to your Dutch oven. I don't measure this, but I swirl around the edges of the pot until it pools in the center. It might seem like a lot of oil, and it is. It makes a big batch of stew. Add your red onion and 2 or 3 heavy pinches of salt. Salt is super important in all recipes, but this one in particular, and you want to add a pinch of salt every single time you add something new to the Dutch oven. Salt will draw out moisture, which will then evaporate and concentrate flavor. If you wait till the very end to season this, it is not going to work. You're also going to need 4 to 6 cloves of minced garlic. You don't need it yet, but just chop it up and get it ready. What you want to do next is rinse a pint of grape tomatoes and carefully dump those into the Dutch oven to make sure you don't splash yourself with hot oil. Then, just like I said, you want to add a pinch of salt. Now would be a good time for a crack or 2 of fresh black pepper, and stir everything together and let the tomatoes start to cook down. In particular, you want to wait for the tomato skins to kind of split open, and then you want to do this. Take the side of your spoon and crush the tomatoes against the side of the pot. So this is going to cause them to release all their juice, all that moisture, which, take a look at all the steam, it's going to cook down and concentrate the flavor. Then for even more tomato flavor, you're going to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. And you don't have to measure it, just squirt some out. Then add a heavy pinch of red chili flakes. To me, this is the perfect spice level, but you could certainly go with more or less. And if you can't tolerate spice at all, Mom, you can omit the chili flakes altogether. Now, you're going to see some caramelization start to form on the bottom of the pot. Just use your spoon and sort of scrape that up as best you can. That is really good flavor, and try to incorporate that back into the stew. Then drain 3 15-ounce cans of white beans. And you can use any white beans you want. Here I'm using 2 cans of cannellini beans and 1 can of butter beans. But drain and rinse those, get them into the pot, mix everything together really well, get the beans coated in all of that amazing tomatoey, garlicky, oniony oil, add your heavy pinches of salt, and then add a quart of unsalted vegetable stock. If you can't find low sodium or unsalted stock, you can use a regular stock, but you're going to want to be more conservative with your pinches of salt up to this point, because you want to make sure you can control how much salt is in the final stew. So give that a stir, and then grab your kale, strip the leaves off the stems, and chop the stems into little bite-sized pieces and get those into the stew so that they can simmer. A lot of people discard the stems, but I think a big part of, economical cooking and quarantine cooking is not wasting things. There's a ton of good fiber and texture in those stems, so let's get those in there. Now you're just going to simmer the stew for 20 to 30 minutes, or however long it takes for it to reduce to the consistency that you like. I like a really thick, hearty stew, so I'm going to let it go a while. Just make sure you stir it every couple of minutes so that you don't burn any of those beans. If they sink to the bottom and they rest against the bottom of that iron pot, they can burn, so just keep it moving. Now, if you were skeptical about how much salt went into this stew, I have to tell you, this is the very first time I have made this and tasted it, and it hasn't needed anything. It usually needs an extra pinch of salt, but this time it didn't. So again, don't be shy with that salt. So once it's to your liking, you pull it off the heat and you take all of those kale leaves and drop them in. And it looks like an enormous amount of kale, and it is, but like most leafy greens, this will wilt down considerably. And I should mention, you can use any dark leafy green that you like. I have made this with collard greens. I've made it with other types of kale. You can use broccoli rabe. Just use what you like and what looks good at the store. Mix it all together so that the kale wilts and incorporates. Make sure you take a photo for social media, because if you don't post it on Instagram, did it even happen? And serve yourself up a heaping, steaming bowl of one of the most delicious things I have ever made in my entire life. I love this topped with a salty cheese like Parmesan or feta, but you can certainly skip it in order to maintain its vegan status. Add a little bit more freshly cracked black pepper, and this is, to me, the epitome of quarantine cooking. It is economical, all of the ingredients are readily available, it comes together quickly in one pot, And most importantly, it is nutritious and outrageously delicious. And if you think it's good now, wait until it has gotten a chance to sit in the fridge overnight and all of those flavors to meld together. It's one of my favorite meals ever. Oh, one last thing. Remember how the bottom of that pot was covered in dark brown caramelization that looked like it was going to be really hard to scrub clean? Well, take a look at it now. If you use your spoon to scrape the bottom of the pot as you're simmering the stew, all of that caramelization gets incorporated into the stew, and it tastes amazing and cleanup is easy.